well, and she's going to come and explain something shortly. So let's take two. Welcome, everybody, to Short History of the World. We can now begin properly, and tech support will come in and fix things as we're going, but we can continue. What I want to do today, apart from getting you to the point where you're going to get an eyewitness account of one of the most dramatic moments in world history from an outstanding scholar, Jared Diamond, in Guns, Germs, and Steel, an eyewitness account, something that took place in Peru, in a little town called Cajamarca. It's essentially as if somebody had been there 40 years earlier in 1492 when Christopher Columbus was landing and was recording what happened when two worlds came together, two continents collided. In this case, 40 years later, Francisco Pizarro, a Spanish conquistador who was doing essentially the same thing as Columbus was, came to the other side of South America and went into Peru. Eventually, will be responsible for ending the Inca Empire and slaughtering many people. But at the moment in 1532, when Francisco Pizarro came together with the Inca god king Atahualpa, there were men with Pizarro who wrote journals and letters later about what they participated in. And it is a remarkable eyewitness account of a turning point in history. We don't have that kind of account in 1492 when Columbus landed. But what happened with Columbus is similar to what happened with Pizarro, but even worse. And I want to prepare you today as we move from Anno Domini up until 1532 for something that could be quite graphic. So if any of you feel that you've been triggered in any way by the violence, then please feel free to leave the class, and you can watch the recording later and fast forward or whatever over the difficult parts. It needs to be said before I begin that when you look at world history, and let's get the map back. Okay, so hold on. That's not working, so I can do this, and to do that, yeah, I just simply do that. Good. So I can fix things on the fly. Let's bring presenter view back. Right? No, presenter view is there. Good, so I don't lose. Excellent. We had a crash earlier this week with the breakout room. It crashed our YouTube live stream, so we're not going to do breakout rooms today, but that's... So it needs to be said that when you look at the map of the world, which you must to understand world history and essentially to understand the complexity of the world today in terms of how many different countries there are, how complicated civilization is, there's actually a fairly simple way, though, of looking at the world. And when you look behind me right now, you will see on the face of the figure that I've used for Story of Humanity, the two great halves of the planet, the Americas, and then that's Africa connected through Egypt into the Middle East, and then into the further east. That's one landmass, Afro-Eurasia. When Afro-Eurasia came together with the Americas, beginning with Christopher Columbus, and then continued over a period of 40 to 50 years into the 1500s and 1600s. It meant essentially that 90% of the Amerindians, as we call them, they weren't Indians. India is a name that was given by Columbus. He thought he was coming to India. 90% of the indigenous population here, of about 80 million people, over a period of 100 years, will disappear. They will be killed. They will die from plague, infectious disease, smallpox. And if you can believe this, I can't believe I'm going to say this right now, measles. Measles is back. Do you know that? And that's because there are people today who so mistrust medical science and so mistrust vaccines. If you can believe this, our news is now filled with a beginning of an outbreak now of measles that we eliminated a long time ago that destroyed many indigenous peoples. And here we are in 2024 because of our ignorance, because of our mistrust, because of disinformation and misinformation, and just general ignorance. We're now dealing again with an outbreak of something that was supposed to have been eliminated from the story of humanity. Anyway, I'm going to calm down for a second because sometimes, as Shakespeare said, the only darkness in the world is ignorance. And I'm passionately committed, as you're about to see with Mayreen, and she comes and explains what we're doing for our World Expo presentation. I'm passionately committed to making everybody, including myself, we will go backwards in this world with weapons of mass destruction, with much more powerful tools, and the violence and cruelty in the world will be greater if we're not smart. But we're not always so smart today. And we're not always so willing to open ourselves to new things. And many of us are afraid. But on that note, Mayreen, do you want to come up and I want to explain a little bit about what's happening in this classroom? And just first, I'm sorry about this setup for all of you and online and watching the recording. We're not going to have the couches going, but this is the way I found it today. What I'd like to do in today's class is essentially get you up into 1532 and have that great reading from Guns, Germs, and Steel. Then we're really just going to work on notes together because one of the things that has been lacking in this room is good notes. And it's something that we haven't been able to get really doing properly. Mayreen's here to help us with this, but first we're going to talk about what she's doing with the classroom. Then I'll do the lecture, and then we're going to go straight to the notes, and then we're going to be done. Okay, but we're going to do the notes together. Okay, so get ready. But essentially, I want to introduce. Have I introduced Mayreen yet? Okay, well, I will just briefly introduce her, and then I'm going to let her speak. Okay, and here you can take a chair. Or, yeah, come. She gets the special chair. Okay, if you want, if you can use it, you don't have to. Mayreen have been officially hired as the Global Classroom Coordinator. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And this has been many years in the making. And at last, we have somebody dedicated to helping make this classroom into something sensational for humanity, as well as help all the other faculty around here get more involved in this kind of multimedia classroom. So Mayreen, I've known for a number of years. She had been a student of mine in short history of the world, along with her sister. And essentially, during that time, she went back to where she comes from, which is the United Arab Emirates, or UAE, in the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. And at that time, when she went back with her family, the UAE was the location of the World Expo in science, technology, and engineering. And she proposed that we should start bringing the expo into the global classroom. And so, to cut a long story short, we, in the global leader class that I do on Wednesdays, she began to live at one point, I think, live from Abu Dhabi, or was it Dubai? From Dubai, she would present what was happening at World Expo. And the World Expo, by the way, is historically the most important showcase of new technology, design, and engineering for humanity. And in the 1890s, early 1900s, when the Eiffel Tower was first built, it was unveiled completely at the World Expo at the time in France, in Paris. Paris will be the site of the Olympics this summer. And over time, the World Expo has been very important. In 1967, Canada had its World Expo in Montreal, and it was held during Confederation, 100 years since Confederation in Canada. And that was a really big moment for the country to declare that it's now a forward-looking, modern country. And the Queen came, and many dignitaries came, and there were all these pavilions in Montreal looking at what would be the future of technology and design. So Mayreen uh, suggested that the global classroom go to World Expo. And well, guess what? The next World Expo is in Osaka in Japan in 2025. And just this week, we've had our first of two proposals um, encouraged, not completely fully accepted yet, but encouraged. And the committee in Osaka, Japan, is very interested in what we're doing in this classroom for the future of education and wants to know more. And if we succeed in convincing them, she and I and a group of students from here, as well as Japanese students, will be presenting the global classroom, the new classroom for humanity, at the World Expo in 2025. And if we do that and we get attention, I can't underestimate what that would mean in terms of the attention for the college, but also for all the students who've been participating in this. It would mean you've been part of something really great in the future of education. So Mayreen's going to speak a little bit about an update on Expo and other things that she's doing as the Global Classroom Coordinator. And I want to extend to you all, always, an open invitation to participate in anything that we do going forwards. And Mayreen can speak about that. Okay, so go ahead.
So hello everybody, good morning. So thank you, Lon, for introducing me and everything, and I'm so excited to be a part of the class. I did take Lon's class, Short History of the World, so I'm excited to be here. It's my first time this semester in the class. So regarding the World Expo, we have submitted something called a co-creation challenge. It's basically something we as global class identify as a challenge in the world, and because the expo is now very closely related to the SDGs, which is the Sustainable Developmental Goals from the UN, that they're hoping to reach by 2030. So the expo next year is going to mark 5 years before we hope to reach those goals. Um, in terms of that, we're hoping to present in regards with SDG number 4, which is quality education, and we're just on the path to doing that. In terms of that, I was brainstorming like how can we kind of involve students better, and just make it more involvement of the students. So I came up with an idea to basically create a global class club, essentially like a college club, and it will be student run, student led. I would definitely have no problems assisting, but I say this because while I was here at the college, I started a Korean cultural club, and that way I was able to meet students like who are Korean who had interest in Korean culture, because I was learning the Korean language, and I felt that that was a way for me to kind of meet like-minded students, kind of create a safe space where we can discuss about the culture, learn new things, talk about the food. So this way, if we create a global class club, um, all the students
Go
who
ahead,
are
I'm going to talk to
sure,
Ellen. Yeah.
the students who are on campus and have no idea what the global class is about and would like to be a part of it because we're such an international kind of outreach, So I felt like it would be a chance for them to kind of attend and be here in person and kind of share their thoughts and experiences towards the class. And they don't have to be like enrolled because one of my problems with because I wanted to take Lon's global class at the time, and it was conflicting with one of my like courses. So then short history of the world came up, and I said, okay, at least it's Lon's class, so I might as well. So I feel like this would give us an opportunity to kind of form a club and kind of make way for students to kind of participate in discussing and coming up with ideas and all of that for the World Expo. And then obviously once that's done and gone, then we can have students kind of just run it and then continue it, until we can, for them to be able to be a part of, the global class and what we're about.
This is great, and I just wanna let you know that, what I'm showing right now is, and I'll loop this, so it is, this is the site in Osaka, Japan, that is being built right now for the expo in 2025, and it will last for, what, 5 or 6 months? And there will be every country that's represented there will have a pavilion that's quite state of the art and progressive. Do you know how many countries exactly? Is it 100 and
The last one had 190 pavilions in total, and I think it was around 150 or 60 like country pavilions, because we do have like other organizations in those pavilions. But for this one, like right before the World Expo actually happens, we do have countries maybe pull out or express their interest, because obviously they have different logistics and things to work out for the country if they're able to. Um, Update on Canada, they actually had their groundbreaking ceremony yesterday.
Oh, did they?
So it's official. Like
For the
they posted
pavilion?
online. Yes, they posted online on Instagram. I saw that they had officially like kind of a groundbreaking ceremony. So they kind of assured in like positive vibes and everything with Japanese officials, Canadian officials yesterday on their website, on their account.
That's
So
great. Yeah, so I just listen, this is not in any way pressure to get involved in anything. We just wanna keep you fully informed on what's going on in this space and let you know that we in the college have ambitions to show the rest of the world that we've created and are continuing to create an exciting new classroom that maybe will energize education. And if you feel that you would like to be involved in any way, please think of it as a way to help make education better for the future for all of us. This is what we're trying to do here, is recognize that after the pandemic, when education got killed and everybody went online, technology did save us. But technology is a double-edged sword. It also deadened us, and it made us extremely dependent on technology. And the result is a lot of young people and grown-ups don't like being in person anymore with people. So, to cut a long story short, we want to bring the classroom into the future, the 21st century and the third millennium, and say, let's use the best of tech. Let's really use technology well, but let's get people back into classrooms and create a space where everybody can be a part of this and explore the story of humanity at a time that is very difficult. Just yesterday, I'm walking out of the Metro Toronto Library in Toronto, one of my favorite places, and there's a book being promoted, and it says Into the Abyss. And it's one more dystopian, dark view of the future saying everything is, falling apart. We need hope. We need a place where we can learn in a positive way about how to solve problems, not about how everything is becoming worse. And that's what we're going to try and do in this space. So your ideas matter. If you want to help us build this, present something great in Osaka, let Maureen know, okay?
So yeah, the first thing we just right now at the moment need someone who would volunteer as president of the club, just because the DCSA, which is the Durham College Students Association, they require that to kind of form the club. So that's first step. So I'm hoping someone will volunteer and we can send the form within next week. That way we have about, because I believe it's week 10. I'm not too sure, but it's week 10 of the semester.
Yes.
We only have about 4 weeks left before semester's done. Students don't come to campus anymore full time because next semester is spring, summer, and not every program offers that semester. So if we can get at least 3 or 4 weeks after we start the club to kind of get the word out, get set up tables in the pit or out here in the CFCE to recruit, like kind of get students interested and like let them know that this is our space and this is what we're planning, like expo team and all of that. That's what I was hoping we could do. So if anyone would be interested to volunteer as president, that would be nice. You can speak to me, you can email. And then we can
The
go
global
from there.
class email? We
The
should
global class, or you can do mine too now.
Okay. Well, do you want maybe write that in the notes, okay? And then you can email her at any time with interest if you would like. Anybody have any? Thanks, Maureen. Anybody have any questions about this or about anything that Maureen has described, or about what the X would? Sarah? Thanks. Yeah, no, here you go. No, and anyway, Sarah, we would not be here in this space with a $500,000 video wall, a new center for collaborative education, $50 million that was built. I was involved in all of this with our president and others. So I've been here in the ground up. I've built the global classroom over a period of 12, 13 years. It would not happen without the students saying this kind of stuff like more, So any way you want to be involved.
So, a question I have is, so you were talking about the club would be trying to sort of, I guess, think tank some ideas for like the global classroom and improving education worldwide and stuff. What kind of stuff would we be able to send to the Global Expo?
Well, since we were part of like we're applying for being a part of the co-creation challenge, this one is something that like I said, we feel like that's a problem in society, and then we have to send them like what actions we've kind of proposed to kind of combat that challenge of like quality education around the world. With the students in the club that we form, it will be more of kind of preparing for that because after we submit the co-creation challenge, we're hoping to apply for something called best practices, where we would have to be there in person, and we would have like there's a best practices area. So once we're there, we'll obviously like talk about our college. We'll talk about the classroom and all of that. So we would need to kind of brainstorm in terms of that. So it's right now, like I don't have information because we haven't gotten like the confirmation or the approval yet. So it's just like a step by step, but definitely in the future we would need like a student team to kind of brainstorm ideas, kind of take up tasks, in terms of like writing, creating like social media stuff. Like it's just different things that we would need help with, and the main idea was also to kind of get students in the classroom, because I know like there's like students online, there's students who watch it after, and then obviously there's you all that are here in person. So my idea was to have more students kind of like be in person, just because it's real time. It's like a safe space to kind of share ideas, experiences. So that was more of the idea too.
And
That sounds great.
to answer the specific question about what we are going to think tank in here, because it's a really good term, think tank. I often actually describe global classes as a kind of think tank learning party. You invite people into the space, and you don't always know who's going to show up. You have an intellectual party, but you're going to think through stuff together. So the committee in Japan wrote back to us this week and said they would like us to know precisely how the global class is going to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4, for example, and this is the goal, because I can give you an answer to this, Sarah, that's quite specific about what we're talking about, and maybe if you join this, you'll have some ideas of how we can take this further, okay? The United Nations has 17 sustainable development goals, as some of you may be aware. And this is to help with the future of humanity, to ensure our sustainability. Sustainable Development Goal number 4 is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. We fit with that, and what we want to do is help them solve, in particular, 2 or 3 problems that we're going to be addressing. 84 million children and youth will be out of school by the year 2030 unless something is done. In general, despite slow progress, some progress in literacy around the world is falling far behind in achieving quality education. I could go on about some of the specific measures that the UN is asking to be resolved and that the Expo committee wants us to address so that we can demonstrate we're going to do that in the future. We want to be able to say, for example, that in a very specific way, we're going to launch a new application in a year at World Expo with Toria. I spoke with our Toria technical team yesterday about this. And the app, which we would make available, it would be an app that can be downloaded on any device, anywhere on the planet, with military encryption technology that is highly secure. Toria right now is like that. It has secure military encryption technology. It's a Canadian company that's developing a very secure technology. We are going to say, for any person in the world, particularly those who are out of school, those who are in crisis zones, conflict areas, that are lacking access to quality education, you're lucky. I'm lucky. A lot of humanity does not have access. And the digital divide in some ways has been growing. We will put an app in the hands of anybody who has a device, any device. And with that app, Toria, they can immediately come into this space. And in this space, they will learn with all of you. There will be, we hope to have a 24/7 operation running out of this room, the global classroom. And there will be other faculty coming in here teaching for free from Durham College, Ontario Tech, in areas of vocational training, which many young people need around the world. So we can say to humanity that now that you have this access to education, we can ensure that every single person on this planet going forwards has a place they can come to where they can learn. It cannot be hacked. Their governments cannot interfere with it. No business can get in the way. This is not about profit making. It's not about capitalism. It's about education. And every single penny that we make in this, if we make anything, will go back into the classroom. It will not be going into fattening my pockets or Mayreen's pockets or Sarah's pockets or anybody else. It will go back into making education accessible to all people. And think, for example, of all the young women right now in Afghanistan. What happened to them? Anyways, we won't get into, but there's so many stories of this. And so we're hoping to really let them know at the expo that we have the tech to do this. So that's kind of one idea, Sarah, and hopefully we'll have many more, you know? Thanks. Okay, great, Mayreen. Thank you very much. So go, if you can, yeah, grab a spot by the smartboard, and then we'll do some notes. But I want to do a lecture quickly. And I'm probably going to have to keep it fairly short. But does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Stephen, Andy, Brandon, did everybody understand what Mayreen just discussed? If I'll assume you did. I don't see anything there, so I'll just move on, okay? And let's talk. Let me make sure I can get this. So first we'll bring this back, and I'll bring this in here. And okay, so we've been exploring this story of, you know, the way human beings have created this thing called civilization on planet Earth. And in this story of civilization, there is a very important story that we're trying to understand, which is how we break through to more and more power and more freedom for ourselves, and the story of how we come to human rights. The giant today is the author of this book, Jared Diamond. You may have heard of this book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, Collapse, Third Chimpanzee. He's had many best-selling world histories. He teaches in California and at the University of California, I think at Berkeley, or it might be at Stanford. And he has spent his life and his life's work trying to understand something about why, when humans became civilized, we started to develop inequality. He's tried to understand why the tribal cultures of the world, the original cultures, the indigenous cultures, have largely been marginalized or destroyed through civilization. And he has tried to help us to understand through his work with tribal cultures in New Guinea, for example, the knowledge and wisdom that they bring to civilization. And he's really tried to tell us that in human history, in civilization, we humans have a problem. That since we began agriculture and since we began food production and we began to build cities and empires, we started to get this thing called hierarchy and got kings and inequality and the role of women in societies became marginalized and Europeans took over, and he thinks this is not good for the future of the world. Let me come back to where we were last week and this figure of one single person who emerged in our story, who never wrote a word like Socrates, but whose life has been written about. His presence has been celebrated and venerated. And for the 2.5 billion Christians around the world who call themselves followers of Jesus, he is no ordinary mortal being. He is the Son of God. I need to say that we've been there before. Long before Jesus came into this story, you have seen others who said they were close to God. These are the God Kings. And I need to help you to understand the world in which Jesus emerged. And that is the Roman world. The Roman world needs to be understood because there never would have been an individual emerging in history who declared that every human being is equal before one greater God. There never would have been a human being emerging who said that no emperor, no human is a king. The only one who matters is God, is the omnipresent, all-knowing God. He was the first one who really tried to fight the corruption of the God Kings. A very significant way. Abraham had been doing that earlier. Moses did that to some extent. We will see in about 600 years, Muhammad, the Islamic prophet, will emerge from the Saudi Arabian peninsula, and he too will declare something similar as well. A lot of these religious prophets emerge in the story of humanity because they are fighting against corruption and injustice. And what they see is a depraved world that has allowed itself to become intoxicated by power, by money, by envy, by all those sins. And it is these men, they've never been women. That tells you something about what's wrong with these models. They're always men. These men say, follow me, follow us, and there will be a better way for all of us. Now, I want to take you now to Rome to help you to understand what exactly was happening. And I am going to introduce you to today something quite extraordinary, which is that we happen to live in a time of the world when technology is allowing us to recreate and bring back things from history that have been hidden or were not so easily understood. And we are lucky that over the last 15 years or so in Germany, there has been a young team of industrial designers, a company called Faber Cartel, who have been diligently recreating and reconstructing what Rome really felt like, what it was really like to live there and be a part of what has been called in human history the eternal city. Now, I'm going to just take you through this website a little bit to introduce you to something about Rome. I'm going to show you a video that immerses you for 8 minutes in what it would have felt like to be literally among the market the grocers and businesses and people who were working around the Roman Colosseum about 2,000 years ago during the time of the Emperor Nero, one of the most depraved and corrupt emperors in Roman history. And you're going to get a feeling of being in Rome, hopefully. And the idea is for you to get a taste of what it was like to, what it would be like to experience what has been called in ancient history the greatest city in the ancient world. It would be like the New York of today or London. And I'm going to show you this and run you a video. Then I'm going to tell you about Rome. And I need to explain a few things. But first, I want to just help you to see something of what we've been doing in recreating Rome. So, for example, everybody can see this clearly. Here we have right now just the homepage from the site that I'm about to show you more in detail of some of the buildings that were part of the Roman Empire um, during the time of just actually after Jesus had been crucified. We're looking at 60 AD right now in this image, and you will see more in a moment, very intensively. But this is the early imperial era, and it is the era of Nero's reign, a devastating great fire marking the beginning of the persecution of the Christians and the redesign of the city towards its world renowned glory. And what's important to understand about Rome in terms of its glory is that during the time of Jesus, it was going through a transition from a kind of democracy, the republic, to a dictatorship. And Jesus saw that. Just like Abraham saw that the corruption of Gilgamesh and other god kings was becoming so excessive that there needed to be something new for humanity. But the greatness of Rome and the city can be shown to you in a video that I'm going to immerse you in. And let me just take you there right now. And to do that, I will come out. And this will help you to really understand it best. This is the Faber Cartel's Vimeo page. Whoops. Ooh. Here we go. Let me make sure and I'm going to let this run for a few minutes. And for those of you watching online, I will put the link in the live chat shortly. But right now there's some music playing here that you can't hear, but you can see behind me and us a recreation of a Roman market scene in about 260 AD. So a little bit later than what I was just showing you. Just experience this for a moment. The camera is going to tilt up the statue, the gilded statue of Nero, the emperor. Let me put this link for. Stop so I can give the link because I want everybody to. Sorry, I'm just a little. Okay, too much going on. Okay, here is the link. Just, okay, good. So for here we go for Stephen and the others. We will do. So here goes the link, and I will paste it in here. Okay, it's not. That's not working. Okay, I'll get it to you later. Okay, I want you to just see this because what you're seeing. Make sure I get this right. There we go. As I describe this, Stephen, could you just confirm and say yes, that you can see and the video and hear me right now? Because this is important. I need to describe something to you. Can you just put yes in the live chat? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, good. So everybody's on the same page now. Good. Everybody here, everybody in the cosmos. And for those watching the recording later, they will be able to see this. They're not getting the music. That's all. At this time in history, Rome fell under the spell of the God King. This spell, as you know, has been great in human history, but no more than in Rome do we see this unfold. For 700 years before Jesus was born, from about 800 BC, Rome went against its kings. It killed its kings and declared itself a republic, which was a kind of democracy. Rome is on the Italian peninsula. If you look at the map of the world, Greece is very close. It's on the Peloponnesian Peninsula. You're talking about two very important centers of civilization in human history. Rome was growing independently of Greece. There was some contact. But it needs to be said that during the period of Socrates that I showed you, and Greece and Alexander the Great, as democracy was being developed there, so it was in Rome too, through its republic. But the Roman legions, the warriors, the soldiers of the Roman army were much greater and better trained and more ambitious than the Macedonians and Greeks were. And through their strategic brilliance, they grew from a little city on the Tiber River in Italy, and gradually their legions began to conquer all across the Mediterranean. They began to move eastwards, and soon, in a period of 700 or 800 years, as a republic, fascinated by the idea of being a great warrior. The idea of being a warrior was central in their culture. They grew into the first great superpower in ancient history. They extended themselves all across the Mediterranean And so all of the countries today that you see, starting from Spain and going east along the Mediterranean, all the way into the Middle East and coming around to Egypt and then Northern Africa, that was all the Roman Empire. They were all speaking Latin. They all had their colosseums and their aqueducts and their baths and their sophisticated cities with theater, but also with constant warfare, constant conquest. But they weren't yet a dictatorship. They weren't yet a place of God kings until something very important happened in its history. And perhaps in today's lecture, I may not be able to say much more than talk about Rome just because of technically everything, the way everything is going. But I'm not going to speed through this. I want you to understand this. This is a turning point in human history. And the reason I'm going to leave this video playing is because I want to haunt you a little bit in the way that this music might be haunting you. And I want you to take in this statue of Nero. Because before Rome decided that it wanted God kings, after all, it experimented with democracy. I can't emphasize this enough for all of you. We're living at a time in history, 2024, which is called the Year of Democracy. There are 40 national elections happening in the world that will culminate with the American election in the fall. There are historians who tell us that when you look at what happened with Rome and the decline and the fall of the Roman Empire, we may see the seeds of our own decline and fall today. And one of the things I'm trying to help you understand in this course is that if you learn history as best you can and you become a student of history, a true student of human history, you will start to be able to pull yourself away from the moment of today, Oshawa, Durham region, 2024. Pull yourself away and look at the bigger picture, and you will start to understand something that the world is in a bit of a strange place right now. And history tells us that when the generals come to power, as they did at the end of the Republic, Julius Caesar, you're going to hear about in a moment, his adopted son Octavian, who will become its first emperor, Augustus, Pompey, Mark Antony, Cleopatra, the last pharaoh in Egypt, the last pharaoh who will kill herself, and who herself was under a bit of the spell of the God King too. When we do that, when we allow the generals and the warriors and the God Kings to return, we lose our freedoms. My job, in some ways, as your teacher, is to wake you up that freedom is not to be taken for granted. Your ability to come into this space and travel from India or wherever you come from and move around the world could end if we're not careful. Let me show you what happened with Rome. Okay, I'm almost got it. Yeah, we are. Oh. Yes. You have to ask yourself, why did Jesus emerge at the moment that he did? Hold on, let me get you this. Sorry, just too many things, and once I show Maureen what to do, it's okay. If we ask somebody who is a devout Christian where Jesus comes from, he will or she will say he comes from God. He's the Son of God, and his emergence has less to do with history and more to do with my religion. Well, I'm giving you the history. I'm going to try and tell you where he came from, the soil from which he emerged, and that he could not have emerged unless there had been this moment 44 years before he was born. 44 years before this Messiah came into the world, who declared himself in his youth a Messiah. He would save humanity. There were many young men at that time in the poorer parts of the Roman Empire who were calling themselves messiahs. And the reason is because they wanted to save the Roman people from the corruption and depravity and inequality and injustice and cruelty of the Roman world, the Roman dictators who had come to power. Here's what happened. 44 years before he is born, there is the most famous murder in political history. Julius Caesar, a general who had won all sorts of wars for the Roman Republic, returns to Rome from Gaul, now France, having defeated the mortal enemies, the Gauls, and Vercingetorix, their king, is brought back to Rome, and he is executed in front of the Roman people by Julius Caesar as a very clear warning and a clear proclamation of his power that I have just won this war. I have a very large army. I have crossed the Rubicon River. When I was told not to cross this river, I have returned to Rome. Now look at what I'm giving you. I'm giving you your enemy. We have Gaul now. I am supremely capable. He paints his face kind of crimson or purple when he enters the Roman market to bring Vercingetorix for his execution. By painting his face, he was declaring that he was a god. That's what purple was the royal color, was a divine color. Purple comes from the snails of Phoenicia, and the Romans had brought those snails back to Rome, and that color they created these beautiful purple robes, and if you wore purple robes, you were the Roman elite, a Roman senator. Julius Caesar was saying, I have the purple face now. I am a Roman god. I am the mighty Julius Caesar. I would like power for life. In the Roman Republic, they had killed people who wanted that kind of power. They had dispensed with their kings and their monarchs. But Julius Caesar was a warrior, an outstanding soldier like Alexander. He dreamed of being like Alexander the Great. And the Roman senators and the Roman people began to fall under that spell. The totalitarian temptation returns. The God King returns. I am your savior. I have won the wars. I want power for life. I will become the first dictator of Rome, the Roman Empire. And he almost succeeded. but he was assassinated. 44 BC, the Ides of March, March the 15th, 44, he is assassinated by the senators in the Roman political assembly. And here is the extraordinary thing in history. It tells you something. After he was assassinated, do you know what the Roman senators chose at that point? After having assassinated him, stabbed him, there were about 44, 45 men, senators in the Roman Assembly, all taking their piece of Julius Caesar, coming in and stabbing him to death. It is the most dramatic political killing in maybe our story. Not so much because they killed him for his reaching for too much power, but because of what they did afterwards. He said that Rome needs a strong hand, a firm hand, a dictator, a tyrant to manage its growth and its conflicts. And they killed him for that reach, and then they gave the power to his adopted son, Octavian, who became the first emperor of Rome, Augustus. And so Jesus, this young man in a Roman province, poor part of the Roman world in the Middle East, he experienced what many Roman people or subjects of Rome experienced then, which was that the Roman emperors now began to emerge. And they used their military, they used the legions to assert their power. And one of the things that happened in Jerusalem, which was just near where Jesus was born, Jesus was a Jew. The Jews of Jerusalem began to fight against the Romans. They were defeated. The Roman legions came in and they destroyed Jerusalem. They destroyed the temple. It was the destruction of the second temple of Jerusalem. And Jesus had also said that there must be another way now for us to confront Roman power. And we can no longer look up to the Roman emperors. There is no emperor. There is only one God, and that is the God of the ordinary human being, one God who loves and cares for us all. He was a rebel against his own faith. He believed that among Jews, they too, among their leadership, had become somewhat corrupt. And he's not wrong about that. It's a remarkable story in Jewish history. Josephus, who's considered the most important ancient scholar of the Roman world, was a Jewish general. He fought against the Romans. But then he realized he couldn't win. And he tried to convince the others who were holding out in Jerusalem against the Romans to come with him and become part of the Roman world. Some did, some didn't. He went to the other side. He went to the Roman side. And he became a powerful, important person in the Roman world, and he began to write extensively about Jewish history. But he, you might say he was a collaborator. Jesus was a Jew who renounced that and said, we must go another way. He was a rebel, he was a free thinker. And for that, the Romans executed him. I'm going to stop by telling you something about what happened after he was executed. Such was the power of this new idea called Christianity that even though Nero and other Roman emperors persecuted the Christians relentlessly, savagely, would take Christians, just like Jews had been taken as well. The cruelty against different religions in history is just, it's stomach churning what we have done in the name of religion. But the Roman emperors early on, Augustus, Hadrian, and others who followed, savagely persecuted these early Christians who were followers of Jesus. Somehow, this is fascinating, somehow the idea that every human being has dignity, everyone is equal, everyone deserves the love of God, remained in spite of the savage persecution. And among the Roman courts, among the Roman emperors, some began to convert to Christianity. Now, I need to say this because it's important that you understand. I told you that Josephus, a very important person in Jewish history, could be seen as a collaborator. Well, among the early prophets of Christianity, Paul and John and others, we might say to some extent too, that they collaborated with the Roman elite in order for their faith to be adopted by the Roman court, to the point where an emperor emerges. His name is Constantine. You're looking at him right now. 300s AD. Constantine, before a battle, on the eve of a battle with one of his rivals, claimed he saw a vision of the cross. And he prayed and he prayed and he said, if Jesus is listening, I will win this battle. And he won the battle. He became the emperor. And he made Christianity the faith of the Roman world. I want to stop for a moment and help you to understand the critical question that we need to ask today, that we need to work on in the notes. It has something to do with what exactly happened in the Roman world that led to this figure, Jesus, who remains maybe the most known, the most influential human being on earth. What took place in the Roman world that would lead this figure to emerge and then become such an enduring symbol that so many individuals in human history, including some of the most fierce warriors like the Vikings, eventually, they're going to convert to Christianity? What was it in the Roman world that led to this? I'm going to stop there and I'm going to work on this together. Okay? Go ahead. And Stephen, can you jump on your microphone? And also Andy or Brandon, if you can, just try to help us to understand. We have Sarah here, we have Nico, and two other students are here. And go ahead. Yeah, I know you have to go. And let's just spend a few minutes and then we're going to conclude the class. But I want to make some very important notes for all of you and for those watching the recordings and elsewhere who watch this later about the meaning. It's remarkable that after all of that, we have an emperor who decides to become a Christian. And the whole face of Europe that will grow from the Roman world will eventually decline. All of those small kingdoms or countries that were part of Rome will become their own countries. Europe is going to emerge from this. There will be an entirely new structure that will become very Christian. And then eventually we're going to have religious wars with Muslims who are going to emerge from Saudi Arabia. There will be crusades. There will be Muhammad, and he's going to fight against this. And then there's going to be great battles in Jerusalem over, the home of these faiths. And then we're going to see at last the emergence of something entirely new, which is individuals like Leo Africanus and Marco Polo, the traders, others who start to travel the world for the sake of business and enterprise. But that's coming. Sarah, do you want to say something? Anything you want to say in terms of trying to understand how is it that, what was it in the Roman world that would lead to this person and his influence having such enduring significance?
Well, can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. One thing that I think is, since Rome was a conquering nation, it was an empire, right? And it had very far reach, right? Like as you said, like they went all the way out to Gaul, and brought their king back and executed him.
Yes. Yeah.
So they had all of these people that were under their thumb, essentially, and they all wanted to rebel. And here is a religion that speaks to the people,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Gives them a sense of power without actually giving them actual power. So if you can get the people to adopt the same culture as each other, they're not going to rebel against the nation. So this may have something to do with it.
I think that you're onto something about how an idea, if it's very powerful, can unite people of such diverse backgrounds. That there was an idea here that transcended the God King, the emperor, the tyrant, and that spoke to the common man, the frail person, the sick person, the elderly, everybody, basically, in that it said, you matter. You are loved. There is no human on the face of this planet, no emperor that should ever wear a crown, because he's not better than you. That's why the crown of thorns was put on Jesus when he was nailed to the cross, because the Roman soldiers who nailed him there and let him hang there for 6-7 hours while he bled to death, this was execution Roman style. Today we execute people in jails and prisons, but we do it much differently. And the Romans executed a lot of people. When there was a challenge to the Roman generals before Julius Caesar seized power, 6,000 of these rebels, led by Spartacus, a kind of slave, were defeated by Crassus, Marcus Crassus, a general like Caesar. And in the defeat, 5,000 men were crucified, and their bodies were stuck up on crosses all along the Appian Way leading into central Rome. Rome did not build roads. They built amazing roads, but they never curved. They never figured out the engineering of how to do that, if you can believe it. They had these incredible straight roads going for miles and miles and miles. Incredible road system. Imagine if you're coming into Oshawa, you're driving along Oshawa, and suddenly, 10 miles or 15 kilometers into Oshawa, you start to look to this side and this side, and you're seeing a body up here hanging there, a body hanging there. And all the way into Oshawa, you're seeing 5,000 men strung up because they challenged the Roman state. You will definitely get the message. But it was not unusual at all for people to be strung up as Jesus was. But the soldiers who put him there, they mocked him. They said, you want to be the emperor? You're mocking our emperor? You take the crown now. while we nail you, we're going to put the crown of thorns on you, and you wear that while you bleed to death. Because they were trying to say, that's what you get for trying to question the power of our emperor. You wear the crown of thorns and you die, you get executed. So, this idea of dignity, in a way, Stephen is not wrong, and he understands this because he believes this, and I fully respect him for this, even though I may see things differently. But he said something very profound. People are hungry for the truth. Now, Stephen, could you jump on your microphone and try your best to explain to us what you mean by truth?
Like, what do I mean by people are hungry for the truth?
No, what is truth? You just said that people are hungry
Well,
for
truth
the
is what
truth.
is
So
true.
what is
Like
truth? Because
the religion of Catholicism or Christianity.
I'm going to push you a little bit, okay? And I know you can handle this. Try to explain it to us, not in terms of your faith, but in terms of what's in your heart.
Not of my faith, but what's in my heart. What does that
Yes,
mean?
you are a human being, right? Would you say more than you are a Christian?
Well, I'm both. I don't think I'm one more than the other. Like I'm not more Christian than I am human. I'm just both.
Okay. Try to help all of us understand who are not Christian, who don't believe what you believe. That actually Jesus was onto something, and so are you. But try to think of it as a human thing, Stephen, not as a Christian thing. What is the human thing here? And please, just for the sake of this discussion, divorce yourself from the idea that we're dealing with a divine figure who is the Son of God, who is somehow otherworldly. He is a human being. Jesus was a human being in the same way that Ramses was a human being. Try to look at this as just simply human to human. What is it there that is so powerful in truth that speaks to all human beings? Because you need to be able to explain this to an Indian, a Jew, a Muslim, a woman who is what let's just say a modern, courageous human being who feels differently and wants to be respected for that. Explain it to her and to Nico, who's from Greece and can help me pronounce Socrates and Thucydides and others, and whose father is a Buddhist. Tell us about truth.
Well, it's hard to divorce truth from Jesus is his God, like his divine nature, I guess you would say. Like what it's a hard question to answer because like
I know, isn't it? Isn't it?
you're telling me basically to
Tell me what's
I don't I
universal.
just
Tell me what's something powerful is in what Jesus was a Jew. He began as a Jew, so he wasn't born a Christian. He was born a Jew, but then he
well, he's
changed.
ethnically a Jew
Okay.
and he's the Jewish Messiah. Basically, like if you understand what was like the reason why Jesus was executed is because he basically the Jews were waiting for their Messiah, and the Jewish Messiah, who is Jesus, came and he said that sinners and they need to repent and all that kind of stuff. And he claimed to be God, and then they said basically, well, you're a blasphemer. So they charged him with
Okay, Stephen,
blasphemy.
let me stop you for a sec. Because we only have a certain, I want to make sure the students walk out of here today with an understanding of what you've said, which is really good, which is truth. That people are hungry for truth, and that there's a reason for why this individual has so endured in human history and continues to, and may, for as long as we are civilized, there's something in there that is profoundly human. What is it? What is that thing, Stephen? What's that truth that we want? We all want. Let Sarah try to answer this. And you have to be able to speak to Indian, Sarah, Nico, Mayreen, me. You're not speaking to Christians now, Stephen. You're speaking to all humans. Go ahead.
So I think one of the really important ideas that came across from Christianity is that everyone matters. And nobody's more important than anyone else.
That's right.
That the greatest is the least and the least is the greatest. There's no difference between any of us.
Equality. Every human is the same as every other human. How simple, how profound.
Before God, though, right? You mean? Like every human's the same before God, like we're all equal in that sense?
Well, let Sarah go ahead and try to answer that. Yeah.
Well, in the context of Christianity, yes. But in terms of the universal idea, like you can take that idea and say it in a number of different ways from different philosophies. I think that many different religions have a similar concept, but I think Christianity really, said it maybe the best first or something, so that it actually spread out. Or maybe it was because of Constantine that it really spread out.
Constantine made.
But I think it was this idea that everyone is equal, and the way in Christianity that everyone is equal is because everyone is equal under God, because there is a God and not many gods, and this one God rules over everyone equally, as opposed to well, you're my favorite and you're my favorite, but I don't like you. Although I suppose in Judgment Day that that stuff happens. Basically, that stuff gets postponed to Judgment Day, maybe.
I'm going to ask all of us to do something very quickly because we just have 5 minutes left. But I want to achieve at least the one thing I came in to do today. Is I want every single person to go over to the board and write down as clearly as they can, or they can draw it. What is the takeaway from today's class? So Nico, you go. Could you please start? And Mayreen will help you. Okay. And for those of you, Sarah, and write it down right now. Like, what would you put on the board? Okay, as notes, and then be ready to go over there and put it into the notes. And Stephen, could you and Andy and Brandon, could you please put that in the live chat right now? Which is, in your estimation, write it as clearly as you can, as precisely as you can, as correctly as you can. What is the takeaway from today's class? Please go ahead. Okay. Take some time to think. We have 5 minutes to do this. And Mayreen will help, and then we will be done. I'm going to let you think. I'm not going to put anything up on the big board for now. Just a quiet time to think. Into the live chat. Stephen, Andy, and Brandon. What is the takeaway? If you need to just make notes, that's okay. But just think about it, and then write it. Got it? You can leave that. That's fair. Well, we'll keep think about it. Okay. Keep. Why don't you elaborate? What do you want to say that's more? Huh? Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Who's ready to? You want to go and? Yeah. Go ahead, Sarah. And put it up. Yeah, that's fine. He's right. We say people are hungry for the truth. We all are. Nobody wants to be lied to. We hate that. So, what is this truth? We certainly spend a lot of time searching for it. So, do you want to write it down on your computer first, and then you can put it up there? Think about it. Just make a note. People, we don't know what the truth is. So that makes it even more mysterious. Why are we spending so much time searching for it? I guess because we don't know what it is, but then, boy, that's frustrating. If you're always
This is like
searching.
almost paradoxical, I think.
Good. Let's see. Okay, well, put Stephen, write it out. Okay, in the live
I'm
chat.
having trouble thinking of a way to like put it because
Okay.
now that I have like your perspective,
Well,
you don't believe in Catholicism, but I do. So I think I know the truth, but you believe in something else.
I could, but I'm not going to, just because we're running out of time. But I could put Maureen right back in the chair and say, Maureen, tell us about truth, and you're going to hear something different, right, Stephen? So then, if you're struggling, then just write that I'm struggling. It's paradoxical, but put it in the live chat. Okay? Yes. Yeah. Let me. Maybe it's just one more thing. Let me think about how we could do this, because you've got a third reflection that's due next week. I would suggest to you that you write your third reflection about this, your answer to this. Okay? The reason I say that is the discussion, but it's just there's more things I have to look. I've got about 200 students, and it's just I can't stay on top of everything now. So I'm trying to make it more simple, But yes, you have the third. I would say to you, go home or this weekend when you start working on your third reflection that's due next Thursday. You have 725 to 750. Try to answer this about truth. Okay? Maureen? Yeah. Go. Do you want to go ahead and write on? Did you have a chance to write, Maureen? Stephen? Heh. Okay, so that's fine, Stephen. Because I'm going to save the live chat now. I'm getting better at this, so your notes are important. It's possible to come to a consensus on what the truth is, since everybody. Good. This makes it very complicated, but I might say to you, Stephen, that I actually think there is a truth.
Yeah, there is a truth, but
There is a truth that
the
is
truth you
universal
can't
to
prove
all
it.
humans, which is it's very, 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 very primal and basic, and that is love. That is Ezra Pound, a poet, once said, "All that remains is love. The rest is dross. The rest is meaningless. All that remains in your life at the end that will matter is love."
Some people don't believe in love, though.
Well,
They
I'm
don't.
not
They
sure.
actually they don't think it's a real thing. They think you know the utilitarian like mindset that like everything is just Material, like you
No,
think
sure.
they think we're all material, like cells.
Sure. Okay, well, we'll revisit this. Thanks for at least getting that in the live chat and for everybody. And my apologies for the tech again. I've fallen behind, but it's okay. It is what it is. I'll see you next week. Okay, you know where to reach me, and you have your third reflection due before the class next week. All right. Thanks. Are you okay to, Maureen? You're good to stay for a little bit? Yeah, because I just wanted to